Cheat code 1, specificity. Most people think that getting stronger is what unlocks skills. But in fact, what actually unlocks skills is getting specifically stronger. Specificity follows the basic principle of stress and adaptation. Your body adapts to the exact stress you put on it. So if you want to unlock a skill that you don't have yet, the best thing you could do is apply the most specific stress possible to the final form of the movement you're trying to achieve. So for example, let's say you're trying to achieve a front lever, but you don't have one yet. The goal isn't just to get stronger in general pulling exercises. The goal is to find ways to apply stress to your body that mimic the final form of the front lever you're trying to achieve as closely as possible. That's why working on front lever progressions, band assisted front levers, or front lever holds with slightly easier angles is going to be way more effective than just doing general pulling exercises like pull-ups or weighted pull-ups. Those exercises help, but they're not specific enough to the final form you're trying to achieve. And the same thing goes for planche. I've seen it so many times. People end up having more success doing elevated planche leans when they're trying to unlock a full planche instead of just spamming bad form straddle planche. Why? Because elevated planche leans done correctly actually mimic much more specifically the activation and the form that you're trying to reach when you're building a full planche. So, instead of just getting stronger, what you're really trying to do is expose your body to the stress that looks as close as possible to the final form you're trying to achieve. Because the closer the stress is to the final form, the faster your body learns how to adapt to it. Cheat code number 2, activation. So activation is the process of priming your muscles, your joints, your tendons, and your nervous system to perform at their best. Sometimes it can be confused with the warm-up, but they're not exactly the same thing. It's kind of like the tail end of a warm-up, but it's more specific than that. Warm-ups depend a lot on the frequency of your training. If you train less often, you usually need to warm up longer. If you train every day or even twice a day at a lower intensity, your system is already partially primed and ready most of the time. But activation is something you could do strategically before you want to perform at a high level, just to make sure your machine is running efficiently. A good way to think about it is like preparing your car before you push it. Like, let's say when I start my car in the morning, I don't just start my car and immediately floor it. I wait for the RPM needle to drop a little bit before I start driving, I let the system settle, and then I can push the car. Activation works the exact same way. Instead of going from 0 straight to 100, you do a lighter version of what's about to come so your body knows and it's ready to produce output. And sometimes activation can be its own session. Like for example, for me when I compete, usually I take a few days off before I compete, but then the day right before the competition, I have like an activation day where I just have a really light day. I'm talking 20-30% of what I usually do just to make sure everything's ready for the next day to produce the best output possible. Cheat code 3, grease the groove. So grease the groove is kind of like a buzzword. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard it before, but essentially it's the idea of using high frequency and low intensity to create neural adaptation, not just muscular adaptation. If you guys watch my video on the stages of calisthenics, there's a particular stage I talk about called normalization. That's the stage after you unlock a skill, where the goal is to make that skill part of your toolkit by doing it as often as possible. The grease the groove is like normalization on steroids. It's the idea that once you already have some ability in a movement and you want to get really good at it, instead of training it harder, you start training it much more often. So instead of doing something at 100% intensity a few times a week, you might do it around 40 or 50% intensity many times a day. Like that, you stay away from failure, you avoid fatigue, but you dramatically increase frequency. The more often you expose your body to a movement while staying fresh, the more efficient your body becomes at recruiting the muscles required to perform it. That's the idea behind grease the groove. And it's one of the fastest ways to normalize a skill and make it feel more automatic instead of difficult. Cheat code number 4, volume work. So volume work is the idea of focusing mainly on increasing volume first. So whether we're talking about a hold like a planche or a front lever, or reps in a certain movement like planche push-ups, front lever pull-ups, planche presses, etc., the goal is to increase either the number of seconds in a hold or the number of reps first, even if that means temporarily sacrificing form. The strategy is to acquire the numbers first and then clean them up afterwards. For example, if I can perform 2 to 3 reps at about an 8 out of 10 form, and my goal is to reach 6 reps with that same quality, I'm not gonna try to force the 6 reps super clean. Instead, I'm gonna allow the quality to drop a little bit to maybe like 4 or 5 out of 10 and start building my numbers up first. So I'm gonna work my reps up to 6, 7, maybe 8 reps with a slightly compromised form, and then I'm gonna clean the movement back up afterwards. And I've realized that this is something that we actually already understand intuitively. Like when you first learn a handstand or the first time you learn a muscle up, it was never clean in the beginning. You just did it however you could do it, and then over time, by repeating it and building volume, you were able to clean it up. But when we get more advanced in calisthenics, a lot of the times we forget that. We get super locked into this like, oh, only clean, and we get fixated on perfect form. So much so that we don't allow ourselves to temporarily lower the quality enough to build volume. And that volume is what we need to actually reach the next level. Now, when I say compromising form, I mean doing it intentionally and strategically. And there's many ways to do that, and I've talked about them a lot in my other videos. One important thing to know though, is you never want to drop your form below a certain level, let's say like a 3 out of 10. Because once you go below that level, you're no longer just using bad form, you're using bad activation. And that usually no longer transfers well to the final skill, and it also increases injury risk a lot. So the compromise in form has to be intentional, controlled, and strategic. Cheat code number 5, optimization. Optimization or technique work is the process of improving a movement by removing the stress and focusing mainly on how the movement is performed mechanically. So in a way, it's not the opposite of volume work, but it's the complementary side to it. Instead of just increasing reps or seconds, the goal here is to improve how efficiently the movement is executed. I might add a super heavy band to reduce the load so I can focus completely on activating the right muscles and making sure the whole chain is firing together. So I'm thinking more about like my scapular engagement, my front delts, my biceps, triceps, forearms, etc. All the pieces that need to work together and produce the correct form. So by removing some of the weight, I can focus on coordinating those things better instead of just surviving the hold basically. At the same time, I'm still gonna be training strength separately, but by optimizing your tech and training strength is how you eventually master skills. Cheat code number 6, progressive overload. So progressive overload is the idea that once you acquire a certain level, you don't stay there. You start pushing the envelope a little bit further. So whether that's a number of reps, hold time, a progression, or a new variation of a skill, as soon as you reach that level and begin normalizing it, the goal is to gradually increase the difficulty again. And there's a certain finesse to it, because you don't want to move forward too fast and start chasing harder skills before you really acquire the level where you are. But at the same time, it's very easy to reach a level and then just stay there long enough for it to become a plateau. For example, once the skill starts feeling consistent, so like once the reps are starting to get easier, once the hold time feels natural, that's when you begin adding something slightly harder alongside it. And a lot of the times, we actually do this stuff naturally, like intuitively. As soon as we unlock one thing, we're already thinking about, oh dude, I want to do this next thing or that next thing. So the key is learning how to do that with the right timing and the right amount of finesse, so you're not always rushing forward, but you also don't stay in your level too long. Because progressive overload is kind of what keeps the whole curve moving upwards over time. Cheat code number 7, programming. So a lot of people think programming just means writing down a list of exercises like 5 sets of this, 10 reps of that, and then just go to the gym and do them. But the best way to think about programming is more like an equation. It's made up of a few main factors, and the way that you combine those factors has a huge impact on your results. So the 3 biggest factors when it comes to programming are frequency, volume, and intensity. So how often do you train? How much do you train? And how hard is your training? And the important thing to understand is that these 3 things are super interconnected. Like they're like different dials on a machine. If one goes up, usually another one has to either come down or adjust so that everything works well together. For example, if you train 2 to 3 times a week, that's a lower training frequency. So usually you can get away with a much higher intensity and higher volume in each session. But if you train every day or even twice a day, that's a much higher frequency. And because of that, your intensity per session usually has to go down. And intensity itself can exist at different levels. So there's intensity within a set, and then there's intensity across your whole session, and then there's intensity across the entire week of training. And the same thing applies for volume. So programming is really about learning how to organize these different factors in the equation together so that they best fit your level, your body, your goals, your recovery, and your lifestyle. Because the truth is, you can't train with an extremely high frequency, extremely high volume, and extremely high intensity at the same time. Cheat code number 8, nutrition, metabolism, and body weight. Now, I know that nutrition doesn't obviously sound like a cheat code because everybody in fitness is always talking about it, but when it comes to performing calisthenics at a high level, nutrition is extremely slept on, and I feel like not enough people talk about it. Let's start with caffeine. So I can tell you for a fact, from me and my training, caffeine is definitely a cheat code. It has a huge impact on my performance, and that's why I have to shout out Gorilla Energy. First of all, because it's a good source of caffeine that actually gets me going for training. Second, because the flavors taste amazing. And third, but most importantly, is because they care about the sport of calisthenics. Dude, I've had a lot of opportunities to work with brands that don't care about calisthenics. They just want me to push their product, make sales, etc. And I turn them down. But when I met these guys, I actually got to know them and saw like what they're about. Dude, they're about making good energy drinks and they care about the culture of the sport. They actually care about calisthenics, being involved in the community, being involved in events, sponsoring athletes, and making a good energy drink for athletes. Make sure you check them out, get yourself some cans, and support a good brand that wants to support you too. Now let's move on to food. As I was saying, when it comes to performing calisthenics at a high level, nutrition is extremely important because calisthenics is a body weight sport. Like, especially when it comes to skills. Every fluctuation in your body weight has a direct impact on what you can do. Like, when you start understanding the physics of calisthenics and leverage, it becomes obvious. Your arms are the anchor point, your body acts like the lever, rotating around that anchor point. So, where your weight is distributed and how much weight you're carrying directly affects how difficult the movement becomes. Because even a few pounds can make a noticeable difference on how your skill feels when you're holding it, pushing it, pressing it, etc. So training calisthenics without being aware of your body weight is kind of like going into the gym and grabbing dumbbells that don't have numbers on them. And once you understand that, nutrition becomes a tool. It's not just something you do to look good or feel healthy, but it's something that you use strategically depending on your goals. If your goal is to build strength, sometimes it makes sense to gain some weight, train at a higher body weight, build muscle, build capacity, build like your nervous system. And then when your goal is to perform your skills at your highest level, let's say you want to compete or you're going to showcase your skills somewhere, then you usually want to strategically reduce all your unnecessary body fat while maintaining muscle so your strength to weight ratio improves a lot. That doesn't mean staying in a permacut. That's something that I did a couple years ago. And for a long time, I thought being lighter automatically meant being better at calisthenics. But what I've realized is that sometimes actually getting stronger during periods when you're heavier is the right move, because then when you cut your weight again, that strength becomes a lot more visible. So, nutrition isn't just about eating clean, it's about being aware of your body weight, understanding how it affects leverage, and using it intentionally, depending on what phase of training you're in. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what else you want to talk about, and I will see you guys next time.